Okay. Okay. All right. So here we go. We are working with pen and ink, and we are going to explore one of the many types of the lines that we use in ink, and that's going to be parallel lines. Here are two drawings done by myself in which I incorporated parallel ink drawing lines. So as you can see, the one on the left with the lock, those are vertical parallel lines. And over on the right are the horizontal and vertical lines in a piece that I called Chop. Our featured pen and ink artist for this presentation today, however, is Claudia Nice. And she is a person that grew up in the Northwest, and she developed a love for nature by traveling in the Cascade Mountains. And when you look at her artwork, you will see that it's very much about nature and the many animals and landscape that is found in the Northwest. Claudia started experimenting with art materials at a very young age, and she could sketch anything that would hold still. She gained her basic art skills and encouragement from grade school and high school art classes, and she went to the University of Kansas, where she began sketching in pen and ink. And she has written numerous books and articles, and she exhibits quite extensively, and she is still living today. So here's an example of Claudia Nice's work. Uh, this is called Draft Horse Team, and it was sketched using vertical parallel lines. Every line in this drawing is a vertical parallel line. She also used 3 different pen sizes for her nibs, and the drawing took 8 hours to complete. A lot of time. Now here's some tips when you're working with pen and ink is go ahead and work with a ruler. Now use the ruler with a pencil only. If you use a ruler in your drawing lines, it'll start to look very artificial and you'll have difficulty mixing your handmade lines with your ruler lines. And by all means, use guidelines. So if you look closer at my radio, this is one that I made for this year's Inktober, you will see that there are pencil lines running throughout the drawing to keep the lines continuously going straight. And of course, an eraser is nearby because you do want to get rid of your guidelines when you get finished drawing. So here's the finished drawing without any lines on it. It's an old-time radio, and all the various shadings on here are the tonal differences were done strictly by lines. So here's an example of parallel lines. This is another one of Claudia Nice's pieces. It's a farm barn. And if you look closely at the image, you can see that the trees are vertical lines and the barn is made out of horizontal lines. And then she also has, let me click on that so you can see those words, vertical, diagonal, and as you guys would call it, landscape or horizontal. This kind of line never has a outline around it, and it allows the eye to feel like you're in a hazy situation because there is white space between every line. So we're going to be doing a pen and ink exercise as we go through the 7 lines of ink, pen and ink technique. And in this one, we're going to work on our sketchbooks with parallel lines, vertical, diagonal, and horizontal. And you will see that in the future, we'll also work with scribbling, stippling, hatching, and cross-hatching. So here's a video that I made for you to show you how to set up your project and to also demonstrate how to make those lines. Okay, so here we go. So what I want you to do in your sketchbooks is to draw a series of boxes so that you can practice the various lines that we just talked about in the video before. Now, I would strongly suggest that you start with a ruler and a pencil and draw some lines so that these lines can help you have guidelines to keep your ink drawings straight. Now what the purpose of this exercise is to make a tonal chart. Now a tone means like a light gray, a dark gray, a gray that's in between the light and the dark, and then also a very dark one, tones. Because when we have 5 tones going on inside of our drawings, like when we want to make a circle or a square into a box or a cone from a triangle, we're going to have value changes. But right now, we're just going to practice on a flat surface. And I'm just going to line these fairly quickly here. Honestly, if I wasn't demonstrating within a time limit, I probably would go even slower. And I actually could bring the lines closer or farther apart. Right now I'm going to kind of equally put them into the boxes so that these are my guidelines. Okay, so that doesn't mean I'm going to go back on top of this with a ruler, but I'm going to go on top of it with a free line, seeing how straight I can make my lines. Okay, so these are going to be my vertical lines. Okay, as I finish up the square. And when I start to ink these, I'm going to want to make this box extra light, like I see up here in the sample, up with the pen and ink exercise. These are going to be light, these are going to be medium, these are going to be dark, and these are going to be extra dark. Okay, now I'm going to go, and this is just my sample box over here. When I get finished, I'm just going to do some fun stuff in there. Just to, because this is pretty technical, controlled discipline to practice making ink lines. And they're also really good for warm-up pages before you start to draw. Now my second row is going to be diagonal. And for the sake of ease, I'm not going to change my diagonals. I'm going to make them all going the same way. So I can come over here with my ruler and just make some more. Again, there's really no rhyme or reason to the size that I'm making these right now. These are going to be my guidelines. As artists, you guys are going to be practicing tonal value charts all the time. Because besides having color, you're going to have the influence of light on color. And that's when the dark and the lightnesses come in, anything that you do. I'll lift my hand so you can see what I'm doing over here. And these will get erased out eventually. But what I'm going to try to do is not to draw with the ruler after I get the guidelines in, and just trust that I'm going to make this work into light and darks. And what you can do is you can actually make a whole bunch of these little squares as you practice, and you can cut them out, and then you can make the perfect tonal chart. Okay, that's just a little secret there. Especially in my class, you can do that because it takes hours actually of practice to really do perfected tonal charts. And why do you do them? They give you something to do without having to think of something that has to look like something. So it's really kind of a mind meditation to do value charts, actually. So you can relax your brain for a while and warm up your hand and get yourself started. Okay, so you can see my diagonal lines are developing on my page in pencil, because then I'm going to come back in with a marking pen and work on getting the different values from one square to the other. Now these are parallel lines that we're working with, so remember that parallel lines never cross each other. That's another type of line, and this is one of the 7 types of lines that we're doing, and this one is called parallel lines. Okay, then our third box is going to be horizontal. So this in your language is landscape, because we're used to computer language of portrait being vertical and horizontal being landscape. Okay, so I'm just drawing down this way so I get my lines, and also to remind myself what I'm doing in each box before I get started. Line thickness is important because it can help you show the light and you can show the dark. Not necessarily easy, but with practice, you get better at it. Stopping to see my hand there. It should be down to the bottom of the square. Yes, there we go. Okay, so if I follow a methodical pattern here, I should be using the same pen in each box. All right, so my thinnest pen that I have is a 0.3, and this is a pilot pen that I give everybody in class so that you've got a thin. Okay, so there's a thin one. And if I look at my chart up in the top, it tells me that the lines go farther apart when I want to make something like not close together. So I've got my verticals. And your verticals do not have to be one long line. They just do not have to cross, they cannot cross each other. Okay, so see what I'm doing here? I'm going to tip it up here so you can see what's happening. So this is the start of my light ones. I can't change the light of the lightness of the pen because it's black ink, but I can change the spacing because as you can see, I'm almost actually doing a value tone drawing in this square because I thought, wow, I started off so close together. I was probably wiser if I would go farther apart. Okay, again, you're going to practice. So if I do see wobbly inside your squares, you're fine. Okay, don't panic. Let's just get on with it. Okay, and get to the point of practicing. Now I'm going to take another pen. This is called the Identify pen, and this is one that you probably used in another one of your classes. And it has a fine tip. Move it down there so you can see it. And it has a thick point. Okay, so that's pretty thick. So I'm going to go over here to the extreme. and go to my dark square. Okay, so I'm going to just move this over just a little bit. And then I'm going to start lining my dark. Okay, this pen already is more controllable because remember, I'm not going to come back on top of this line. So if I want dark, I'm going to need to keep that really close. And move across the block. It's a line, so I don't want to color in the block because I won't see a line. I'll just see a very black box. And this is called pen and ink. Okay, we're looking for a line to show up, not to be colored in. Okay, so I'll keep going along the side here. I'll lift that up so you can see it. So you can see there's definite difference between the light and the dark. And honestly, the 3 squares in between are the hardest ones to make in a tonal chart. Because you can determine what it's going to be your light, and you can determine what's going to be your dark, but it becomes harder to determine your middle gray, your dark gray, and your light gray. Okay, so I can't really go back in there. With this pen, I do have the other side of the identify pen that I can also come back in and make some marks. Okay, and you do get a bit tired when you're doing precision marking. Like you saw in the early part of the video, how Claudia Nice took 8 hours to draw those horses. Okay, so now I've got my 2 blocks, on light and on dark. Okay. All right, so I'll lay that down in the light. I prefer actually to have it more. The little bit of slant to work with the ink is okay. All right, so I'm going to go with this medium tip to do the center one. And start working on, and this time I'm going to have, so you can tell I have a different point with this. Okay, so now I'm working on the center with this medium. Okay, this was flowing much easier for me. I don't have to have as many breaks. But I want to be careful because I'm going to have distance because I'm gauging a little bit thin here. I think I can do it because I'm going to combine the 2 pieces as I go along. Okay, so now I'm going to come over here to the dark, and I'm going to use an alternating. This is 1 pen altogether. Oops, 1 pen. And I'm not going to push as hard because I can control the thick and thinness of this pen as well by the pressure that I have in my hand. Okay, so there is a difference between those boxes. Now I'm going to let this one set for just a minute. And I'm going to come back over here with my thinner 0.3 for the light box. can see what I'm doing right here. I'm coming in with the light box. And giving myself just a thinner line. So I'm light with my touch. And I'm also using definitely the 0.3 as a point, these are more like ones and like 1.5s. So you find when you do pen and ink, you're going to find pens in all sorts of point sizes, and you might actually develop quite a collection. Okay, so when you look at these boxes, there's a change in the values that go from extra light to medium to dark and darkest. Okay, so as you can see on the page, I'm going to work on down into diagonal and horizontal. And then what I'll do is just put a slide on to finish the film or the demonstration for today. And then you'll move on with this lesson. So this is Mrs. Clommer telling you to have a great day and to ask any questions or concerns you have about this project. That this is our primary thing that we're doing to warm up for our drawings that we are doing in pen and ink. Thank you so much for today. And there is the finished chart of the parallel lines. So you can see the diagonals and the horizontals are finished as well. And in order to see them clearly, I did not put a box of black around each one of them. So you can see how the line ends and how it begins. So thank you so much for watching today, and I'm looking forward to sharing with you the next line and the techniques of pen and ink. Thank you. Bye-bye.